Before we talk about where we are, we must first remember from whence we came. Marty Schottenheimer brought winning football back to Kansas City and built what is now known as Chiefs Kingdom.
We transitioned from a team built on its defense in the 90s to one of the most dominant offenses and return men in NFL history, led by Dick Vermeil.
In 2012, a 2-14 Chiefs team displayed disastrous play on the field and turmoil off it. We asked to save our Chiefs, and in came Andy Reid, who immediately turned this franchise into a perennial playoff team.
Then, on April 27, 2017, the Chiefs broke free from their journeyman quarterback restraints and drafted Patrick LeVon Mahomes.
In 6 years with Patrick at the helm, we're back-to-back champs and a dynasty headed towards a three-peat. We are unrelenting for this city, these players, and this team. This is the show for the allies. Arrowhead allies.
Welcome in, everybody, and we are proud to welcome a very special guest to this edition of Arrowhead Allies, former Pittsburgh Steelers and Chicago Bears fullback, also formerly of ESPN and the great NFL matchup we enjoyed with Ron Jaworski and Sal Paolantonio. Now author, we welcome the great Merril Hoge to the show. Merril, how are you?
Merril!
Welcome in.
Oh, Merril, I don't think we have Merril's audio here.
Uh-oh.
Merril, you might have to go in if you can hear us and go to settings and select audio. Select your earbuds. That might do it.
It definitely worked for me. I got my settings together. You're not the only one, Merril. It's okay.
Hey, it's Julia Gulia, who was married to Glenn Gulia and wedding singer, said, nice intro.
What's her last name?
Julia? I do my best.
Julia,
so,
Julia?
And we got Go Chiefs from Louisiana.
Sippy Sports Show, what's up?
Sippy Sports Show. We got another sports show.
The chat's been underrated.
Nope.
Can we give a shout out to the chat? Like these last few weeks have been
We
incredible.
still don't have you, Merril. I think you might have to go to settings.
Down there at the bottom of the screen, it should say settings.
Well, it
And
shows that he's
audio.
muted. See, if you go by his name, it says he's muted. You got him turned on?
No, I can't
Behind
unmute
the
it.
scenes
He might have
action
to
right here,
either unmute
Arrowhead
himself
Allies.
or select his audio, and then it'll unmute him.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yeah, there we go. Hey.
Earbuds. Get rid of those earbuds.
Oh, how's it going, Merril?
Going well, boys. It's good to be with you. I'm glad we got a color coordination going on. We got
Yeah.
a red.
If you weren't a Chiefs fan before, you are now after that intro and all the red in here, man. And thanks for doing it.
My
Gosh,
pleasure.
we're getting so close to football season. We've had the Hall of Fame game, the Hall of Fame enshrinement, and everything that went with that. And it just really means football is here. And when it comes this time of year, it just I think we all just get an extra little pep in our step, ready to roll. And man, things are coming fast and furious, aren't they?
They are. Preseason's not as long as it used to be. So, and there's not as many days to work and get better. That hurts teams that are young and new. Doesn't, I don't think, particularly affect a team like the Chiefs because there's a lot of, and they're just so seasoned and they have consistency, and that's great value no matter what profession we're talking about. But clearly in sports, it does help.
Well, Merril, you're decked out in the gear there. Find a way. I need that hat and that shirt, but we want to talk about that. Yes. You're on your third edition of Find a Way, 3 words that changed my life. And I know you talk about your childhood, your upbringing, also having to leave the game of football early and retire. And you dealt with cancer diagnosis as well, and how you found a way each and every day to move forward. And this isn't just something for you that you found. This is something you go out and you do speaking engagements and you help others find their way to overcome whatever they're going through.
Yeah. Well, honestly, that's what I believe in the message to do. It's, at some point in the message, and it's towards the end, the reason I'm grateful to share a message is because I know it's possible for people. I know it's possible for everybody who's going to listen to this or hear this or see this, especially when you use the greatest tool known to mankind, and that is our mind. It is our greatest tool. It's our greatest weapon, our greatest ally. It can be our worst one too. That's why the key is, do you control your mind, or does your mind control you? And that's a challenge that we all have, but it has been proven. I've lived it. I've seen it. People that learn to control their mind can overcome anything and become anything. And that's really what the message is about, is instilling that hope and faith in them, challenging them to take ownership of their life, where they want to go, what they want to do, what they want to be, and taking the proper steps and action to get there and accomplish it. I'm a product of a lot of people. It's kind of interesting. One of the first people to call me when I was diagnosed with cancer was actually Andy Reid.
Wow.
And, I sit on my couch. I call it the dark days of diagnosis, because it's not just the day you hear it. That's devastating that day. And it's hard to describe. I don't think I'm articulate enough to describe how dark that was. But then it seems to get darker every day, because you have all of these other tests and all these other things you got to get through. And then you got to wait for them. And I've known Andy for a long time. Andy and I consider Andy part of the West. He came from BYU as a coach. That's where he started his coaching. But I played in the Big Sky. I'm not that far from BYU. My son played at BYU. He graduated like 5 years ago, or 3 or 4 years ago. But I'm familiar with that area. And the Big Sky at the time when Andy was coaching there, like, these are the coaches that coached in the Big Sky. Dirk Cutter, Marvin Lewis, John Fox, Brian Billick, Dennis Erickson, and then most people wouldn't even know that. And I only mentioned those coaches, and the reason for that, the Big Sky in the 80s. So this is mid 80s to late 80s, actually early 80s to mid 80s, was the only conference in the entire country that was throwing the football and playing pro style football. It was the only conference. It was a 1AA conference, the Big Sky, but it was the only conference. And, Andy at BYU, that's what allowed BYU to be effective against, some powerhouses, because throwing the football was so foreign to so many big-time colleges. They didn't know how to defend it, and they didn't know how to handle it, and that was a problem for them. It's not a problem in college football today, but back then it was, and it was probably one of the pivotal reasons or key components that helped me make the National Football League. But when you were doing all this, what all this comes back to is just the character of Andy Reid. I've always had great respect for him. I'm happy for him, because, they kept knocking on the door in Philly. They just couldn't quite get there. They couldn't quite get over the hurdle, and they were able to do that in Kansas City. And they actually have an opportunity. I don't know if we're going to talk about it, but I think the Chiefs probably are in one of the best positions in the history of our game to do a three-peat, and I think the biggest part of that is it's just never been done. And anytime you're trying to get better, the biggest challenge for every season is the challenge of growing and evolving and getting better and changing things. And I think there's no greater challenge for the Chiefs than the three-peat, just because it hasn't been done. And I think that Andy does a terrific job of leadership in that perspective. You got good core people. I mean, Rick Burkholder, your athletic trainer. Okay, he was our assistant athletic trainer in Pittsburgh before he went to Philly, and then he came over with Andy. Rick Burkholder's been a dear friend. So I know a lot of core people in that organization, got great respect for them, pull for them, and hope the best for them. And if there's a team that can do it, I think, and quite sometimes I think they're poised and have the best opportunity that we've probably ever seen.
Man, cancer is not too far removed from my life. As my brother, I got to witness him battle cancer when he was 12 years old back in the late 80s. And so, he is definitely one of my inspirations to 3 words that I like to use: get it done, which is in the same spirit of your 3 words.
Yep.
But during your cancer journey and through your life, what is a strength that you discovered that you didn't know that you had?
Well, I will tell you this. The thing that probably, when you say that, when you initially had, I feel like I seldom have ever told this, but it does tell you the truth about a human being when you hear it. You always are preparing. You see, this is why Chuck Noll was such a great coach. I think this is what makes Andy such a great coach, is they know how to prepare people and challenge them for the fire, for the real live action. See, coaches go by who they trust. That's who they got to keep, who they trust. But, when you say, well, if a fire breaks out in our house, here's the plan. Now, does that mean everybody's going to execute the plan when fire breaks out? If fire does break out, you don't know. At the end of the day, you don't know. That being said, I had just read a book about a diagnosis of this guy had been diagnosed with cancer, his journey. He ended up successfully beating and winning the battle. But I remember closing the book going, man, I could never do that. That would be beyond my capabilities. And I'm like, that's really nothing I got to worry about based on my family history, how I take care of myself. Man, that ain't even a concern. I swear to you, that ain't even a concern, man. Put the book down, went to bed. 1 year later, I get that diagnosis. And I will tell you this, two things overwhelm me, if not consume me. I was devastated. Chemotherapy and dying, it's all I could think of. And I lost my mom when I was young. And so the sting of death, I understand. And then I know how losing a parent can wreck a home and change lives. And then, I have kids at the time that were 9 and 7. It was actually after I had told them what was going to take place, because the doctor had called me, he said, listen, you got to go through brutal chemotherapy. You got a 3-pound tumor in your lower back. It's about the size and shape of a football, ironically. And he said, you're going to be sick and tired. He goes, anywhere from 14 to 17 days after your first treatment, you will start losing your hair, and you're no longer going to feel like working out and playing a basketball league and all these things I was doing. And he said, Merril, it's going to take a toll on you. I go, a lot of people don't survive the treatment. And I was like, and he said, and I can't even promise what we're going to do is going to work for you. And he hangs the phone up. And I'm like, now I am completely overwhelmed, if not devastated. So I share with my kids what was going to take place. They're not used to me being sick and bald and on a couch. Right after I got done with that, I went right back into that thought process of chemotherapy and dying. And to answer your question, I was exactly the person when I closed the book. I can't do it. It's beyond me. It's just something I would never be able to handle. And it was my daughter who'd worked across the room, and she actually climbed up in my lap. She's got her little dainty arms around my neck, trying to get my attention. And I was so lost in darkness, I didn't even realize it until I finally look at her, and she said, "Well, then you know what, Dad? You better find a way." And find a way has been a parenting tool. I've been using this. Like, first time they come in my office, first word out of my work is going to be, "Well, let's find a way," because I want to get their response. I want to hear what they are responsible in the journey. And to have it reversed, but those words again, I mean, God, they changed my thought process. They ignited a journey in me and a change of a mindset that very similar to happened to age 12, where this whole thing actually started. But it was supposed to help me live a dream. I never thought they were going to help me fight to live. And that changed. So what I realized is this right here, the power of this. Do you control your mind, or does your mind control you? My mind was controlling me. All my mind was feeding me was death, chemotherapy, awful, just everything. And that day it switched. And I was like, okay, dying, not an option. Being sick and tired and laying on a couch front, sorry for myself, not an option. I went in my office, I wrote down a goal, tore all my goals down, I wrote down one. I would destroy non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. I then opened myself up and I committed to it on that goal, on that day. It picked the wrong guy, and I never surrendered. And if will was medicine, I would have been cured right then. But man, my mindset changed, my energy changed. I started taking action. So is that unique and different? No, I am no different than, I learned half of this stuff from other people, a majority of it, from Walter Payton to Aristotle to Chuck Knowles, to people that you wouldn't know, my own daughter. And that was one of the biggest turning points of how powerful our mind is, and that we're in charge of that. And how we choose to approach things is our responsibility. That's not the other person's. People who point fingers, cast blame, and make excuses. It's a toxic blender of disaster that has garnered no success by anyone ever. In fact, people that point fingers and cast blame and make excuses, they will make their day easy, but your tomorrow harder. Yeah. So people that take ownership of stuff, and I'm not saying that's necessarily easy thing easy. That could be a challenge. However, it's a lot easier to take ownership of your life than to run from it the rest of your life. And when you do those things, that's when magic happens. That's when things change. So having lived it as a dream and having to live, I know what's possible for people. I just go back to that. I know what people can do. Everybody has circumstances. They have challenges. How you approach it is vital. I think we all know the results if you do nothing. Well, think if you did something. And when we start to do something that energizes us, that changes us, and that empowers us. And that's really what Find a Way is about in a nutshell, is instilling that hope and power in people.
Beautifully said.
Amen, Merril. Your story is definitely inspiring. What year did you find out that you had cancer?
2003. I have to think about that now. Like February, actually on Valentine's Day, February 2003, on Valentine's Day, 2003.
When you see, since 2003, since you found that out, when you see what Chiefs All-Pro safety Eric Berry had to go through and endure just to come back and to continue to play at a high level, what can you tell us about, what he had to go through, or how did you compare that with yourself at all?
You know what? I remember that. What I don't remember, did he have Hodgkin's or non-Hodgkin's?
Yeah.
Now, I'm going to tell you what the difference is. The doctor who discovered this cancer, his name was Hodgkin's. When he passed on, they started to find other cell types. And this is a blood cancer type of cell. Okay. They called it non-Hodgkin's. However, there's two categories. And most people will say Hodgkin's is a easier battle, that there's a greater chance of cure in there than non-Hodgkin's. So I had non-Hodgkin's. Then there's a bunch of different cell types in non-Hodgkin's. There's a bunch of different cell types in Hodgkin's. And the reason I share that is, I don't know exactly what kind of treatment he went through. Like I went through the most brutal type of chemotherapy. Here, I'll give you an example of my treatment. I'm 6 hours into it, and my nurse looked like she's going to a nuclear plant. I mean, she got plastic draped all over her. She's holding a syringe with red fluid. Now I'm sitting in a chair, so she's way across the room. So I was like, man, that does not look good. And I started looking around the room, find out who might get it. Next thing I know, she's standing in front of me. She said, now listen, this right here is, the nickname's called Red Death. And we got to be really careful. The reason we have it in a syringe, because I have to have ultimate control, because if you have a reaction to this, and what she meant by that is, that's why I had all these tests. I was testing my body to see if it was going to withstand the treatment I was going to get. So this is part of the treatment. And really they're looking at your heart. Is your heart strong enough to withstand it? She said, we got to make sure that you don't have a reaction. If you do, we got to shut it down and care for you right away. And other nurses started to walk in. And then she said this. She goes, we got to be careful. We don't want to get anything outside this syringe, because if we did, it could give you and I third-degree burns. I don't say it, but I am thinking. I'm like, well, wait a minute. If it's going to give us third-degree burns on the outside, like what's that going to do on the inside? And she hooked up to my right forearm and she pushed. It went from my elbow to my eyeballs to my lungs to my toes in seconds. I have never felt anything violate or scream through my veins quicker than on that day. Then I knew what I was up against. Then I understood the brutality of the journey. Now, not everybody has to do that, but I will just tell you this: none of it's easy. I remember when I heard of his diagnosis, and I got to go back. I don't know what his treatment was. But if I remember right, he had to do some type of chemotherapy treatment, if I remember right.
Yeah.
And
it was Hodgkin's.
Yeah, it was Hodgkin's. So,
Yeah.
And listen, that doesn't mean he didn't have some brutal chemotherapy, because I know some Hodgkin's that you have to do that. But what I first thought of was him being in great physical shape is going to be a huge advantage. Now, go to the people and the resources that he has there, the support that he got. That's a vital component of success too, internally, externally. And to watch him do that and come back and play, what I think it does for a lot of people, man, that gives people hope. When you watch people do that, that gives you hope. You pull for people like that. Because listen, as soon as I say that, I think of dear friends of mine, Sam Mills, Stuart Scott. They didn't have Hodgkin's, but they had cancer and they never survived. And that's why I live with a perspective on life I never had before. And that perspective is all I would have missed. I'm going to say it right now because I mean it. Like, I would have missed this. I don't miss the opportunity to be here. I think about that. The opportunity, I'll think about it when I'm done. I'm like, man, if I didn't survive, I couldn't do that. And that means a lot to me. I think about that. I'm grateful for that perspective because I think I get to embrace and appreciate things more than I did prior to. And I try to get people to think like that too a little bit. And it may be a little harder when you haven't faced death. You really haven't heard something that could end your life. And there's no way to get you to think like that, but maybe to appreciate, how you just appreciate life and opportunities more, and not rush through them and not rush life, and enjoy the opportunities and experiences that you get, and be in the moment with it.
Amen.
Yeah, we're so thankful you're here and able to share that message and be around your family and friends and share it with us here. We can't tell you how much we appreciate it.
Yeah, Merril, that is beyond powerful stuff, man. I really appreciate you sharing that. It's obviously an honor and a privilege to get a chance to talk to you. I've been a big fan of yours for many, many years, and I think it goes without saying, I speak for the rest of the guys and everybody that's watching and listening to this, that we're all very happy you're still around. So the world's a better place with you here. You impact a lot of people, man, myself included. And just to put a little side note, man, you look great. Whatever weight you've been losing, I'm gaining. So can we maybe try to find a little balance here? That'd be great if we can find a way to do that. But Merril, on the football side of things, man, because I kind of want to bring some levity to this, man, because what you're speaking is so powerful. But if we keep talking about, I'm gonna end up crying on the show. So
let's go football, baby.
Let's talk some football, man. The thing the thing I love the most, man, watching you back in the ESPN days, was you would nail these takes. I'm sure there were times where you were off on a few things here and there, but you'd be, sitting right across from Skip Bayless or any of these other guys, and you'd look them dead center of the eyes and tell them what this player is. And I always respected that about you, because that's how I always like to present myself, is to stake my flag in something and show myself presentable with research. And that was the thing you did. And I remember you nailed it with Johnny Manziel. That's one of the most famous ones you did, man. You said, I don't believe he's the guy. I don't think he's going to work out. And you nailed it. Same thing with Jadeveon Clowney and the Khalil Mack thing. Noah and I were talking about before the show started today. I want to hear some stories, though, maybe a couple examples, if you will, of guys that you knew were going to be studs and ended up becoming studs. And was Patrick Mahomes, possibly one of those guys? Because you're real close to Andy Reid, and you got a great, history with him. And knowing this kid with all this talent's going to be with Andy Reid, I don't want to assume or put words in your mouth, but you probably got a little excited when you heard of the potential of what this could become, because now we're talking about a three-peat, and maybe you were somebody that envisioned that before it ever happened.
Well, this actually happened at a meeting, and I'm gonna tell you this because I only wish it had been on air, and this was only by accident. I never thought it was going to happen. I wasn't like I envisioned it happen. So when it got to the draft with Patrick Mahomes, people talk about Mitch Trubisky, and I'm like, okay, wait a minute. Stop with Mitch Trubisky. He's not even a first-round draft pick. And what the Chicago Bears did there was still set them back. They may not ever recover from it. The Patrick Mahomes evaluation, because I go back and oftentimes reread my notes and go through my notes. I remember because I can't make up this stuff. This is why I ain't smart enough. That's why watching tape, in order to share football analysis, football information. Yes, I played the game. I had great coaches. I learned a lot of great things. But studying tape, there's no replacement of that. There's no analytics that can tell you about a player like tape. There ain't none. Okay, that's what's actually happening. It's for another show, but something in our game that's eroding. Like analytics are becoming a little more popular than analytic evaluators are more popular than football evaluators. I'll take football evaluators all day long over analytic guys. Analytic guys are not. When you look at the comparisons and the evaluations, you can still make a good team. You can build things, but if you want an edge, you get a football evaluator. That's who you use. So go to Patrick Mahomes. The word that stood out the most, because there's always a word for every player that almost I build off of. He was wild. I was like, man, he was wild. I'm like, but you had to but there's two things I really look for, processing and accuracy. And then there's different degrees there. Okay. Now his processing was wild. Okay. His accuracy, I loved. And I remember in a meeting, I said, this is what he needs. I don't think he'll get it. I go, because this is the unfortunate luck of a player. Because Andy is such a good friend and I love him as a teacher, I said, let's say the Chiefs got it, which I was like, that's not a chance, because based on how things were set up, nobody was thinking Patrick Mahomes was going to Chiefs. No, the Chiefs. Maybe the Chiefs were praying that, but nobody really knew that wasn't even a thought process. And so in the meeting, I was like, he needs somebody to break him. I go, if somebody could break him, I go, this kid can do things others can't do. Okay, it's not even close. Like the Mitch Trubisky thing, arm, strength, talent. I mean, action. Not even close. What they saw there, that's why I always talk about. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Talent is in the eye of the beholder. And what does that guy or that lady seeing that makes that a guy that could play in the National Football League? I don't know what eyes he had there, because Mitch Trubisky never had that skill set. He didn't have it in college. He's exactly who he was in college in the NFL. Exactly. He was inconsistent, and he was a train wreck when it mattered. He was like that in college. I remember North Carolina game, NC State game. First of all, I had the worst bowl game I've ever seen. He threw a pick six on a flare route, which was like, keep in mind, a flare route is a backwards flare out back. Okay, you throw it beyond the line of scrimmage in man coverage, man, you would better not throw it, because the coverage is too close. Just that ball has to be behind the line of scrimmage. Just theoretically, just time wise, guy 7 yards downfield, linebacker picks it, gone. Anyway, NC State game. This was the end of it for me. It's 3rd and 5. They're on the 40, and I think they're down by 4. I know they're down. I know they need a touchdown or a field goal. I know they got to score to win. And there's only like a couple minutes left in the game. So here's your biggest moment of truth. Your season is riding on this. In fact, their slot wide receiver ends up going like the 3rd or 4th round. He was a very good wide receiver, dynamic in the slot. So they had a really good player in the slot. And he just smokes. They're playing man coverage. He kills the defender. He is wide open. And he hits the 3rd down sign, or the first downs and 1st and goal sign. He doesn't even get the ball within proximity to make a catch. Man, I hit my clicker. I'm done. This guy, he's not consistent enough. He's not accurate enough. And this is like my 9th or 10th game of the kid too. It isn't like my first game. It is like I keep trying to find something. I'm like, okay, am I missing anything? And that's when I knew then. I was like, ain't no way. And no way I would put my career and my organization on the chopping block with this guy. Now, Patrick Mahomes, I did not have that, but I go, man, that's a challenge to break him. I go, you're gonna have to break this kid over time, and you have to have a teacher. And I didn't even anticipate he might have a mentor. Okay, which that became a vital component. What he fell into was the best scenario for him. It is exactly what he needed. One of the greatest teachers. You had a great mentor, and they groomed him. And then to his credit, he took that on. We oftentimes forget about the player. The player is responsible for doing that. People go, I can teach that. Well, you sure can, but can it be learned and applied? You never ask that. That's the most important aspect of football. Can it be learned and applied? And to his credit, that's what he did. Aaron Rodgers did some of the same thing. Aaron Rodgers coming out. I don't know if you remember watching him in his preseason. He couldn't throw a flat route. Man, that guy was a train wreck. If he would have started his first year, Aaron Rodgers might not be the Aaron Rodgers we're talking about.
Yeah,
because he would have been ruined physically. Patrick Mahomes might have done the same thing had he not gone to somebody else and had to wait a year, and they groomed him and seasoned him to get him ready and primed, because he was truly a guy with a ton of just wild, reckless talent. I mean, you can see it all over the place. And man, you got to harness that. It's not easy. That's a challenge. So there's a lot of things that got to go to work there. All of them worked, and all of them fell into place. And the Chiefs have you guys are gonna be dangerous for years. For as long as he's your quarterback, you'll always be dangerous.
Music to our ears, Merril.
Yeah, we love that. And we loved Merril at the Super Bowl, getting a chance to meet you there back in Vegas. We had a great time. I think your manager was like, hey, we got 6 minutes, so we're making up for it now. We got a little more time today. It's great. And we brought this up a little bit, and we'll give you some time to maybe fire back a little bit more on this because you didn't have a big history playing against the Chiefs. The Steelers transitioned from Chuck Noll to Bill Cowher, who was, obviously in the Marty Schottenheimer coaching tree. And then you guys meet in 94 in the playoff game from the 93 season, the divisional round of the playoffs at Arrowhead Stadium. Just take us back to that game. We touched on it a little bit during that interview back in Vegas, but I believe it was your last game as a Pittsburgh Steelers. You went to the Chicago Bears the very next season. What a hard-fought divisional playoff game. I remember Joe Montana trying to wear a glove. He wasn't going well. The first half, the wind was swirling. And then in the second half, there was a lot of fireworks and a lot of late second comebacks and big plays and a punt block and a fourth down conversion, a lot of Joe Montana stuff, and inevitably a Nick Lowry field goal that sends the Chiefs to the next round.
Yeah, actually, offensively, we were ripping the Chiefs up and down the field. Actually, I was having a big game in the first half, and then we changed. We started giving to Leroy Thompson more, and we switched some of the things we were doing offensively. That hurt us. That wasn't the difference in the game. The difference in the game was our block punt. I mean, that's just it. It was I think it was the only turnover, and that was the one turnover that was the difference. And you let Joe Montana, any great quarterback, hang around long enough, you're just asking for death. You're just asking for it. You got to put them away, and we had a chance to put them away. I don't think we were ever really behind in that game till the very end.
Mm-hmm.
I think all my losses in the playoffs were like that. We kicked Denver. We were ripping Denver for 59 minutes, 58 minutes. No, 57 minutes. Let me get this right. 57 minutes and 40 seconds, just slapping them all over the field, and then we stupid turnover and we lose the dang game with the final seconds. It's just like that's why. When I talk about analytics and statistics, okay, there's the most important statistic in football. The number one statistic that tells you the greatest chance of winning and losing is turnovers in the NFL, period. Yeah. End of story. You can make up anything you want and try to add up. Nothing trumps that. It is still one of the most greatest components of telling you who's going to win a game. And then the other aspect of winning consistently is controlling the tempo in our league. Being able to do those two things, if you can do those things, win the turnover battle and control the tempo in the game, you got a high percent chance of winning every Sunday. But those two things are not easy to do. But there's two things that must be done if you want to win consistently.
Yeah, and Clint brought up our conversation at the Super Bowl. There was another conversation you had that made waves, talking about Caleb Williams, everyone trying to say he's the next Patrick Mahomes. You said, slow your roll a little bit. I don't know. I'm watching the tape, and I don't see it quite yet. We'll see how he develops here in the NFL. But talk about some of these rookie quarterbacks that came in, Jaden Daniels and Michael Penix, who's going to have to sit behind Kirk Cousins. That was a little confusing. And, of course, Caleb Williams.
Well, see, the Caleb Williams thing got completely misunderstood because I say he's not special. And I don't think he's special from this perspective. Accuracy and processing, okay, those two things, okay, he's actually an accuracy aspect, he's actually elite. And I've made that very clear. The guy is elite. But processing, and he played in purely a college system. And even in that, and listen, I always look at just because they played in a college system doesn't mean they don't process things well, and they can process very good and show high efficiency. And he was just okay. There was times, you watch him from one year to the next year, those schools started to see who he was, and they started playing different. Then he started to play different, and he started to morph into, man, you know what? That slant's there, but I don't want to make that throw. I'm going to hold on to it and make a play. And listen, they showed a lot of great plays that he made, but I could have showed you so many more that were bad plays. There were interceptions that I saw that were just, oh my gosh, balls all over the place, getting the ball knocked out. I mean, they literally lost a bunch of games because of the turnovers that he created. Okay, not the opponent created. He did it by being reckless. And I'm like, to get better and understand how to play in the pro system, and go through that process and play with that structure, that's an arduous journey. Okay. He does not have Patrick. He's not going to sit for a year. Okay. He doesn't have some of the greatest coaching in history of football. He's not going to have a mentor who's going to help him lead. He's going to be the starter. Okay. So he's not going to have those luxuries. And those are luxuries that a lot of guys don't get, that I'm telling you is valuable for everybody. And I don't care what kind of level of talent you have. It does help the process of transitioning to the league. And probably the biggest part I just talked about it. What happened back in the draft when Patrick Mahomes was available and the Bears could have drafted him? They took Mitch Trubisky. So now he is our Patrick Mahomes, and this is exactly expectations are dangerous. What are the Chicago Bears thinking right now? What is everybody talking about from the Chicago Bear perspective? They're going to win Super Bowls with this guy. They're going to be the playoffs now. Teams win championships. Okay, Patrick Mahomes, as good as Patrick Mahomes was, I'm telling you this, 2 years in a row, I will tell you the 2 Super Bowls that they've won, most against San Francisco, I still would have given it to Chris Jones. I'd have given it to Chris Jones, the MVP. Chris Jones made more plays, especially the first one. Shoot, without Chris Jones' plays, you don't beat San Francisco maybe the first time. He made the plays that gave you the chance to win the games. Shoot, Chris Jones again. I mean, that guy's made more unbelievable freaking plays. And I'm like, God, it's kind of sad because I'm not trying to minimize what Patrick Mahomes did, because what he did is elite and extraordinary. However, if you looked at after you watch tape, I'm telling you, if you go back to you finish watching tape, and you're like, okay, who was ultimately the best player in the entire game? It's Chris Jones. It's Chris Jones both times. I mean, but media, TV, wow, is that really going to be exciting? I'm telling you, that's how it works.
Merril, even to your point about that, you mentioned the Eagles Super Bowl, the scoop and score by Nick Bolton. Who opened up that play for that to happen? It was Chris Jones. He's the one that had the double team. He shifted both those guys over. So really, all 3 Super Bowl victories, you can make a case that Chris Jones was an MVP player.
Know what? Touche. You're exactly right. The guy has, to me, listen, I think people who know football know that dude is just a bad dude. Mm-hmm. I mean, I just feel like he got robbed, at least one of them, I'm like, come on. I mean, the people who do this crap, I'm like, come on. Then you're a lot of people who do that don't know real football too. I'm gonna be honest with you. So, that's the problem with that is, he was the best player on that field and he deserved it at least one of the 3 times. I guarantee you, he deserved it one of the 3 times.
Well, maybe he'll get it this 4th time.
He could, brother. I'm going to listen. That's not they really have, anything that. Their biggest challenge, I think the biggest advantage they have is that nobody's ever done it. But nobody's ever done it. There's nothing that could create a passion and focus for a team that nobody's ever done this, ever, in the history of our game, ever. But here's who had a chance to do it. Mm-hmm. San Francisco, Pittsburgh.
New England.
Although John Elway
Denver, yeah. Never been done. I don't think there's any greater caveat that can because you need something. You need something to change. You need something fresh, something energizing. That would be fresh and energizing. Let's go get it. Nobody's ever done it. Nobody's ever done it. We'd be the only ones. I just think that's a great motivator, man.
Absolutely.
Man, 2-part question. 1, did you and Jaws ever have to pay for any Edge Pro Gel? And 2, how many hours per week did Jaws actually watch film?
All right. First of all, we didn't even get 1 jar of Edge.
Come on.
I know. The Edge NFL. We're like 10 years the Edge NFL match. We used to ask, do we even get anything? I mean, like one of us, one can would last a year. I mean, that's all you got to give up is 1 can. So we never got that. And like Jaws and I used to debate and argue, like, who watched the most tape. I will tell you this, though. When I first got there, my first show I ever did, it was actually during a season. So, Sean, do you remember Sean Gale?
Yeah.
Okay, so Sean Gale, who was a teammate of mine in Chicago, he was on there initially. What he didn't want to do, what you had to do is you had to go to NFL Films, which is in Mount Laurel, New Jersey. And then usually what my routine would be is I'd fly into Philly, drive over to Mount Laurel, do the show. Then I'd drive to New York for the evening, Friday night. And then Saturday I'd head to Bristol and then do shows there Sunday, Monday, and then head home Monday night. Sean Gale didn't want to go to ESPN. He just wanted to do the matchup show. So he thought, well, I'm going to try to do what I did as a player. So he held out. He's like, I'm not coming in. Because you used to have to go to NFL Films to watch tape. Steve Sable is the one that freed the tape up so that I could stay home and watch it. But that's a whole different story. So Sean Gale goes, I'm not coming in unless they redo my contract and I don't have to go to ESPN. So ESPN goes, well, why don't you just come in and do the show and then we'll talk about it when you get done. So as soon as they got done, they fired him. Okay. They got the show done. And then they called me because I was doing college football. I helped them launch college football. So they called me up. They, hey, would you like to do the NFL full time? And I'm like, oh, absolutely. Actually, I was elk hunting actually in Idaho. And my agent calls me. So I have to head back home. I get to the NFL films. Like I think it was Tuesday, maybe Wednesday. We shot the show Friday morning. So I'm already 2 days behind. So I'm watching as much tape as I can to get ready. Now keep in mind, as a player, I got ready for one side of the ball for one opponent every week. In the matchup show, you got to get ready for every side of the ball and all matchups. Like it was like overwhelming initially. So anyway, I get in the show and we get to this one segment and I just didn't really have anything that was a good football point. And so, man, now Jaws was like, oh, say this or say that or say this or say this, right? And he gave me a couple of things in the matchup show to help me get through the show. So we get it done. After that day, first of all, it tells you the genuineness of Jaws. And because most people wouldn't do that and they would be, like, don't come here without being prepared. And I was like, I'll never come here again unprepared. That's number one, because there's a standard here that Jaws set that, man, I will always live up to. And he helped me through that show, but he made it really clear, not by saying it, just by his actions and how he went about his business, that I'll never sit on that show again without being prepared by watching tape. And we used to talk. This is actually a show like that. A half-hour show is actually 22 minutes in content. If you break that 22 minutes down, there's probably, we'll just for fun here, we'll say it's 10 minutes for me, 10 minutes for Jaws, and 2 minutes for Sal to do his things, okay? And that's probably a little high on the 10. It's probably more like 9, but we'll use 10 as a round number. We would watch almost 5 hours to get ready for 1 minute of tape.
Wow.
That's how we looked at it. We were watching. It takes us 5 hours to get ready for 1 minute of this show. Now, when you're done getting ready for that show, we were ready to do any other show. We had more information than we had time to put on that show, and we could have done any show in America, but you had to do that in order to get ready. And I started calculating. There was times in the show where I would talk about how many hours that I studied watching tape and how much time I spent in charity work and other couple of things to have some fun, but it would be well into the 60s, 50s, 60, 70 hours of tape study all week long to get ready for that show.
Wow. Merril, the running game is non-existent now in the National Football League. The running backs are not getting paid. I'm 54 years old, and I remember back in the 80s and 90s when the Buffalo Bills were just a powerhouse offense. They were unstoppable. Every time they would just dominate the AFC and they'd get to the Super Bowl. They lost 4 Super Bowls in a row because they went up against teams that wanted to play against them by running the ball and playing defense. Just run the ball, take time off the clock, and play defense. We had Joe Theismann on here 4 weeks ago, and I asked him, I said, do you think the running game will come back to how it was maybe in the 80s and 90s? And he said he doesn't believe the running game will come back to that magnitude, but he still says the running game is important. As I mentioned, the running backs aren't getting paid. And the only way I can see the Chiefs getting beat, if they're ever going to get beat, is if another team comes in and runs the football and owns time of possession. Yes, I'm old school, and I know you can relate to this, Merril. Do you see the running game coming back to slow down these juggernaut offenses like the Kansas City Chiefs?
Well, first of all, this is a piece of history here. It's the first time I've ever agreed with Joe Theismann. So
we'll let him know.
Yeah, tell Joe that. He'll laugh at that. Joe and I go way back to when I started at ESPN. We worked together for a long time. I love Joe. And he is right from this perspective. There's a lot of things that are misunderstood. Like people say, you mentioned that the running backs aren't getting paid. Well, you don't think $15 million, $16 million a year is paid? I mean, you don't think
it is to me, yeah.
I don't know. That's a lot to anybody. I mean, I see. So listen, I'm a running back too. And these running backs that, are going to, I don't know what their plan was. Okay. It was the stupidest plan ever because nobody's going to change it. Okay. Because I know I've been on all sides of the arena as a player, a coach, in the front offices. Okay. It's a business. Okay. And in a business, you have budgets, and you're never going to change a budget, because that budget, if you start screwing with the budget and you do the wrong thing, you're going to jeopardize the team. Okay. So they're never going to change that. It's just a position that is what it is. I mean, it is the most brutal position in the entire league. It's got the shortest span, and that's just the way it is, So you're going to have to make your money. And if you don't want to make $15 million, then go do something else that's going to give you more. I don't know what it will be, but if you find it, go do it. So it's about perspective. So there's a lot of things that are lost in the running game. Okay. First of all, people call it a two-back league, and that is absolutely incorrect. In fact, that's the most ignorant statement ever made. When I hear that, I'm like, oh my gosh, okay, then they must have started watching football 20 years ago. Okay. If you look at the history of our game, there's only one thing that's changed. There's several things, but one of the things that changed in our league, and it started around the 80s. Okay. It's about the middle 80s, and then it came into the early 90s and forward, was the formation. Okay, you go back to the Steelers, you go back to the Cowboys, you go back to San Francisco 49ers, I believe even the Denver Broncos at the time. Denver was out of it at that time. What was the formation?
I formation.
No, split back.
Okay.
Even Miami Dolphins, when they won the Super Bowl, they were split back. Okay, Franco and Rocky. Okay, Rathman and Craig. Okay, split backs. Okay, split backs. Two backs. Okay, now there was a predominant ball carrier, and the other guy touched it, maybe 5 to 10 times, depending on how they split it up. But it was two backs. So this guy at least had carries that took him from this guy. So when you went to the I formation, which is around the 90s, and it became a predominant I, then all you gave it to was this guy. So you couldn't give it this guy 30, 35 times a game. Just you had to replace him and give him a break. So that's when people, became a two-back league. It's always been a two-back league. They just changed the formation. That is the only thing. It's always been a two-back league. So that hasn't changed. Anybody that I use the New England Patriots all the time with this. The year they won the Super Bowl, remember it was just right after you guys killed them on a Monday night game.
2014.
What year was that?
2014.
What was the record after you beat them? What was the record?
They were 2-2. They fell to 2-2.
Okay, so they're 2-2, and it was the first time I actually did a playbook on Tom Brady, where it's the first time I'd ever seen him flinch and literally scared in the pocket, like he didn't trust anything, like he was flinching. You guys had him flinching, blinking. He was a train wreck. Cincinnati, I think, is 4-0 coming into New England. Now, based on the tape that I had watched to this point, I'm like, there ain't no way. Ain't no way. And New England's going to get out of this. They're going to lose 2 in a row, because Cincinnati, the way they were playing, I was like, what did New England Patriots do? Man, they came out, 2 tight ends, I formation. They hammered the football, and they threw run action off of it, which is one of the greatest ways to throw the football. I don't care who your quarterback is. If you really want to shoot, that's what they do with Lamar Jackson. I mean, predominantly Lamar Jackson. Everything's off of some type of run action or play action. A run action, when you're selling run, you're committing to run, you freeze and paralyze the box, and that opens up coverage. It simplifies coverage. It's either or. That's all they did for weeks to get them back on track. They've done that so many times. Shoot, when they lost the Super Bowl, just before they end up playing Philadelphia, who did they go get? Because it was the one thing they thought cost them winning the Super Bowl.
A running back.
Corey Dillon. They go get Corey Dillon. Philadelphia, and they're going head to head. Both of them have a moment of truth. What does New England do? They run the ball like 4 or 5 times straight with Corey Dillon. They don't throw the ball at all. They end up getting the lead. Philadelphia is in a similar scenario. What do? They just keep chucking it all over the place. The quarterback's a wreck. They don't calm him down. They don't give him any break. And that was a big reason they lost. Andy has done a better job of getting to the running game and understanding the value of it. So to answer this, I know it's a long-winded one, but anybody who thinks that's not a critical phase to win a championship will never win a championship. And the only team I have seen do it where they negated it for the most part, there's only one team I can think of. You guys might be able to think otherwise. It's only one, and that was when the Rams won it. And they barely
still had Marshall Faulk, and
Yeah, they barely won. They barely beat Tampa.
Titans.
Barely beat Titans. Then they go to the Titans. Shoot, if Javon Curse doesn't hit Kurt Warner and the ball's not thrown short, that's not a touchdown.
Right.
Yeah.
All right.
The guy's covered. I mean, the receiver, I forget who it was.
Isaac Bruce.
Yeah, he makes the great adjustment. The defender doesn't see it. I mean, but that ball's not underthrown. That's not a touchdown. You know, and that game's probably completely different. And so, and this is actually another truth about the NFL. The more phases you have to defend, the harder the team is to beat. So you look at your offense. Okay, so your passing game, you got short, intermediate. I mean, that's when you guys had oh gosh, damn it. This one completely brain dead. Cheetah from
Tyreek Hill,
yeah. So when you had that element of explosiveness, so you had the vertical aspect, you have your tight end that kills the middle, and then you have the short. You have three phases to your passing attack. I mean, that are all lethal. And then you throw a running game in there that if you're good, strong side, weak side, I mean, those two phases, now there's 5 phases. You can't take away 5 phases. You can take some of it away, but then the others survive. That's why teams that don't have a lot of phases. Well, listen, it's so funny it comes all to this. Your playoff game against the Baltimore Ravens was one of the greatest executed game plans I have ever seen in playoff history, from offense, defense, and special teams. What did you guys do to the Baltimore Ravens nobody else could do the entire year? You guys made their quarterback play quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
You did not let him do the run action and throw the football down the field. That interception he threw was a pivotal example of why Lamar is magical and where he is flawed, and he will stay flawed. He was like this at Louisville. He is not a reader and a progressive guy. Because I'll tell you this on that play, if you go back and look at the play, they had a stutter go on the outside. Okay, pump and go. The corner's off like 12 yards. You're on the 20 or 25-yard line, whatever you're on. Okay, it's done. It's not even an option. Okay, he pumps it. He wastes his time over there. The tight end that he actually ends up throwing it to, arguably, is not the wrong throw. It's just he's too late. That ball should have came out. It should have even went over there. You should have said, okay, that guy's dead. Boom, I'm throwing right here. And then let's say he does try that. The last thing you do is throw it to the tight end. You got your dig wide open. It's wide open. And he's got no pressure on him. But he didn't. He doesn't know. That's not what he does. That's not what he does well. That's why he's never done well. He probably will never do that well. And you made him play quarterback. I actually watching that game, I was like, that's how well you guys had to play. You had no room for error because that team was the Ravens. You made them play to the one weakness that they had. And nobody else could do that. Yep. And you did it on the road. And I thought it was actually one of the greatest games from playoff and all the things I've seen played in, one of the best executed game plans by a team I've ever seen.
Absolutely.
Real quick, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask this question because we've been talking about Patrick Mahomes. We've been talking about this potential three-peat. We've been talking about the historic side of things. And, Merril, I know you're somebody that pays attention to these things. I don't know if you're big into the whole GOAT debate or not. But regardless, I'm going to ask the question because I don't have any opportunities I'm going to get with Merril Hoge, so I'm going to have to do this right here, right now. Patrick Mahomes gets his 4th Super Bowl by the time he's 29 years old, potentially his 4th Super Bowl MVP with half of his career still to go. Where is he in the upper echelon of quarterbacks? Because for me, I don't know what else he has to prove to be the best quarterback we've ever seen. I think from a stylistic and skill standpoint, he's the best I've ever seen. But I think if he wins the first quarterback to ever three-peat, and does this and has his 4th Super Bowl before turning 30 years old, it's really hard for me to debate who's the greatest quarterback of all time. But this is why I'm asking you the question, Merril. Where would he stand if he ends up completing this?
Well, you just said a bunch of things in there that still Tom Brady, to me, from a overall position and that he's been there 10 times, won 6. I don't know how many MVPs he's got. That'll be hard to pass. But you said some other things, some intangibles. Like Patrick Mahomes is a little different. See, here's what makes Tom Brady so good. And actually, Patrick Mahomes is probably he's not the elite in our league, even right now, in what I'm about to say next. From a guy who can process and be accurate and throw the football, I mean, be unbelievable decision maker and be accurate and execute plays. That's what made Tom Brady great. That's actually what drives quarterbacks out of this league and ends them getting cut and moving on because you fail to do that consistently. The guy who's the best at it in our league right now is actually Joe Burrow. From a processor and accurate, he just like. Now, the guy who, I call it, Patrick Mahomes is kind of an outlier in a way. When you look at the way he plays, I actually think when he got his ankle hurt and you guys played Philadelphia, might have been the greatest growth I've ever seen in Patrick Mahomes because then he couldn't really run. He was forced to sit in the pocket. In fact, I didn't think he'd win the game. You'd beat Philly because of that he would not be able to play to the level that he would need to, and he did. And I thought it was his greatest growth, but he still plays with a wild card and does some things that are an outlier category. So when you start throwing those type of things and then you look at what he has done to this point, right now he's already in an elite category. I don't care if he wins anything more, really.
Right.
He's up there with, you start thinking of four guys I would think of just off the top of my head. Obviously, Tom Brady would be one. Joe Montana would be next. And then there's one guy that I've always thought was so underrated that he actually took it because we played against him so many times, who just elevated a team and could do magical things, was John Elway. John Elway was a bad dude, man.
Yes.
I mean, you guys saw him. I mean, what am I talking about? You guys saw him.
Yeah. Too much.
Yeah.
Too much for our liking.
So him. So the turnabout is fair, right? You guys get Denver back now. So there's your guy.
You ruined my childhood, man. You made it, but he ruined it.
Yeah, I know. I'm telling you. So like already, okay, just forget 3P, forget another MVP. There's like four guys you could think of that he's in that same group right now. You're always going to find different categories and a different sticking point to say the greatest. So I still think the greatest player who's ever played in the history of our game, pound for pound, and nothing will change my mind on it, is Walter Payton. I'll never change my mind on that. I just from how he played the game, the things he did, the team he was on, the teams he was on, and how he performed. Man, I don't know of anybody that was like Walter Payton. And that guy is indirectly and directly, because when I was in Chicago, I got to know him even better when I played in Chicago. But so you're always going to find different categories. Just don't be bummed if somebody doesn't say Patrick. Tom Brady is all the best, stay the best. Patrick Mahomes is a bad dude, man. Yeah. Period. Right now, regardless of what happens. And listen, there's nothing but danger ahead for teams that have to deal with you guys with him at quarterback. Period.
Well, Merril, I can't tell you how informative and amazing this was to have you here. We had a large audience in here, lots of good comments, and want to make sure that people are aware and where to find you and to get you at merrilhoge.com and the Find a Way, the book, and the third edition now out, and all the great stuff that you've done, and to be able to share all this stuff with us here today on Arrowhead Allies has been tremendous. We hope we see you. It's the Super Bowl in New Orleans. And maybe we'll do it for longer than 6 minutes this time. But hey, we loved having you on for an hour here on Arrowhead Allies. That made up for all of it, man. It was great.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys. I love what you guys do in Kansas City. I was there at an event speaking here. It's been a couple months ago, and you can feel the energy in there. I love I love the city. I love the people there. I've never had it. Well, I told them the only time I've ever had a bad time in Kansas City is I've been in Arrowhead. So I just go to Arrowhead. I love Kansas City. I just can't go to Arrowhead.
Come on back. It'll be a lot funner now, I think.
Barbecues on Starcade next time you're in town.
That's right. We got you.
I love it, man. Yeah, we'll do that. We'll make sure we do it, bro.
Thank
Good luck
you so
to
much.
You guys this year.
Yeah, we got to have you on throughout the season. We'd love to do it. So
yeah, absolutely. Reach out. We'd love to do it.
Absolutely. It's an honor, Merril. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
That was humbling.
The great Merril Hoge, and this kind of relationship started back at Super Bowl 58 in Las Vegas, where we were able to grab him for just a few minutes, and then to be able to stay in touch. That's one reason we love to go out there and do interviews from Radio Row, because we are able to keep up with a lot of these guys and hope we can bring them here to Arrowhead Allies and you were all the proud recipients of Merril Hoge's wisdom today.
Now we might go a little Arrowhead Allies After Dark here because
Yeah.
this usually don't go an hour.
We'll run through. We got some topics we got to run through, guys. So stick with this, and we're gonna keep it rolling here. So
sounded like we had a commercial there, Clint. You're like, stick with us through the commercial.
I'm sure that does.
The topic: NFL Top 100. Feel the madness as Travis Kelce comes in at number 9, Chris Jones 6, Mahomes 4, and then we've got a running back. Shane told us running backs are gone, but this ranking says no, they're alive and well. CMC at number 3, Lamar at number 2, and our good friend the Cheetah Tyreek. Peace out at number 1.
Whew.
I think it's a popularity contest. It's correct me if I'm wrong. Here's what I've been told. The players are the only ones that vote on this, right?
That's what we're told.
Okay. And they have to have all their votes in by December, right? So if they're voting in December without having any idea what's going to happen in January and February, then you can't look at this list and take it seriously. What did they say? What do they say in election year? Something we're going to avoid because we're not political. Every vote counts. How can you vote on a totality of a top 100 if the season's not over? You got to let the season play out. What do you think, Brian?
Well, there's a story of Tom Brady when one of the rookies on the team in like 20, I think it was when after they beat us in 2018, it was in the locker room celebrating and the dude is crying because, he's on his way to the Super Bowl. It's like Tom Brady's like, bro, what are you crying for? We're just going to the damn Super Bowl, bro. I don't play for AFC championships. I don't play for Pro Bowls. I play for Super Bowl titles.
That kid's like, well,
it's an NFL
going to the Super Bowl.
This is an NFL top 100 list. I don't give a damn. Matter of fact, keep it going, please. I'm talking about this.
Bring it.
I'm talking about this on the Blitz this week that I will be dropping later on tonight on my Instagram at Brian B. Shining. The bulletin board is full, fellas, for 2024. It's full. It's the first week of August, not even complete. And the bulletin board is full for the year. Please keep it coming. Please. Yeah. Number 4, everybody know that it's atrocious. He's a victim of his own greatness right now. And I understand that last year was not his best year statistically. Fine. Whatever. It doesn't matter at the end of the day. When we go to the playoffs, it's a new season. And that's the magic of Patrick Mahomes, is that when the games really count, when the heat is really on, when you really need him to come through, he does it. And throughout his career, he's done it almost every single time. The floor for this man is the AFC Championship game. And you're going to put him at number 4 on the top 100 list of the year? It's a joke. And again, I love it. Keep it coming, please, because you're adding fuel to the fire for the Chiefs to 3-peat.
Well, whether it's for Tyreek, though.
Well, yeah, whether it's the players or anybody else that's voting in this, I want to thank them because unlike Brian, which I do share Brian's sentiments, Patrick Mahomes cares. He cares a lot about these things because he's a petty man and he likes to have a chip on his shoulder. And what's the one thing that a team that has had so much success over a 6-year stretch, what's the one thing that could really keep them from achieving what they're set out to do, which is to get this 3-peat? Getting them a little monotonous, getting a little lethargic, maybe getting in their own heads a little bit and, not being as focused. These are the types of things that gets these types of teams and these kind of dudes like Patrick Mahomes refocused if he wasn't already as focused as he already is. So these are the best things that can happen. And I told Chiefs fans on Twitter, man, as soon as this list came out, because I laughed, I know it was a joke. It is a joke. They do this for reaction. Guys, this is the best thing that could have happened because of the fact that last time Patrick Mahomes wasn't number 1 on the list. In fact, he fell to number 8 before the 2022 season. What happened that following season? Oh, Patrick Mahomes became the first quarterback since Kurt Warner to win MVP, Super Bowl, the Super Bowl, and then the Super Bowl MVP. So if history repeats itself, we should absolutely love the fact this man is not only number 4 on this list, but is the second quarterback on this list, behind a guy that Merril Hoge just got done obliterating with his known flaws in Lamar Jackson. So I'm all for it. I love it. Thank you so much. Mwah, to NFL Top 100.
Yeah.
Clint, we have a preseason game coming up. Kansas City, Jacksonville, Saturday, August 10th at 6 p.m. That is this Saturday. And I've got some players you can't see. Maybe some of you can. Justin Ross up there is the first name. I'm not going to read all of them because I'm a fun haver, and reading every name on this list is not fun. So, but we do have some names on this list. If you want to point one out, there's a lot of D-backs that are kind of fighting for those last either 1 or 2 spots. So that could be interesting. Below the line is players that are definitely making the team, but it's just interesting to see how they play, how they work in with this team, how they've developed, if they've already been here, like a Felix Anudike-Uzomah. But the offensive line, I fell asleep and my forehead hit the Z a bunch. So thinking about that. So if somebody else wants to talk about that, they can. But
I got 3 guys that I'm really looking for in preseason games. Number 1, wide receiver Remigio. I got to see his
name. You combined Nico and Remigio. Rico. I like it.
Nico Remigio. Thank you. I'm looking forward to seeing him and what he has to provide, because I think he can potentially knock one of these guys out of the wide receiver spots. I think the Chiefs are keeping 6, maybe at the most. I think 4. They got 4 tight ends. They got more. I know they got more than 4 tight ends, but Irv Smith along with Noah Gray, the rookie, and Kelsey, I don't know what the receiving room is going to look like, but I'm looking forward to seeing him. Number 2, Chris Oladukin. Look, last year he was great in the preseason. I don't know if you guys remember, he was making some plays. I like to see his mobility. I like to see him move around and see how he's grown from last season. And the final one, Luis Rezemet. I'm looking forward to seeing the whole kickoff scenario. I saw it again with the Texans and the Bears. Loved it. Loved it. I really enjoyed it. I think it's going to work. But I'm, in practice, he ain't been looking too good, fellas. I know we touched on it last week, but
he's a gamer.
Yeah, he might be a gamer. You get the ball in his hands in open field, he might, take it back to overseas when he was playing rugby. You never know, and take it the distance, Devin Hester style. So I'm looking forward to seeing those three players.
Clint, I know you want to talk about CJ Hansen on the offensive line and maybe some other.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought that up. I cannot wait. I've waited all offseason, Lance, to see this offensive line gelling during the preseason.
Listen, I've already won the offseason, damn it. I got Kingsley Suamataia, all right? That's all I needed.
Hey, it's great.
Right?
We're going to see it, and we're going to see it in live action. Now, Lance, what I do agree with you about, and you, as you have said, this roster, this team is 95% in the bag. We love that. What's been great about this training camp is the amount of fun the Chiefs are having. Herman Boone in the movie To Remember the Titans kind of scoffed at his running back, Petey, and said, let me tell you about how much fun you're going to be having. Well, you know what? We're having some fun here at Arrowhead Stadium out here in St. Joe at the practice facility here this offseason and training camp. We got Patrick Mahomes spinning around doing the drunk man's dart throwing with the ball after that blindfolded. We love what we're seeing. The downfield throws to Xavier Worthy. It all looks great. Patrick Mahomes is having fun again. And so that's what you want to see carry over into this game Saturday. I'm assuming this tropical storm is going to be missing Jacksonville. We talked about that being an issue. I think the Chiefs are going to go to Jacksonville and play against the Jaguars. A lot of rain there, but no, I think you want to see some explosive plays. You want to see some people having fun out there. Is that still allowed? I think it is. And so for that reason, I'm ready for all of it.
Read every name on the list if we're not having any fun around here. But if we are, then I look forward to a Xavier Worthy touchdown.
I'm going to say this, and I want Lance to touch on it because I know how he feels about preseason. Jacksonville still is getting a record amount of rain this week with Tropical Storm Debbie. It's not Little Debbie snack cakes. It's a big tropical storm that's getting them a lot of rain. So I'm concerned with the field. If there's any part of the field, like if the Chiefs brass gets there, the coaching staff get there, and there's a little concern at the 24-yard line on the west side of the field at the 24, I'm going to be concerned, and I'm not going to play any of my starters because I'm not going to take that chance. Lance, are you concerned about the rain that's hitting Jacksonville? I know how you feel about preseason, and I want you to talk about it, but are you concerned about what the field will look like come Saturday evening?
Oh, absolutely. I think the NFL has a real problem with field conditions, and the Chiefs have been one of the recipients of that discipline. A lot of times we've seen the lack of discipline. We've seen the Chiefs lose Harrison Butker for half a season, Trent McDuffie. We've seen them lose guys just over the last couple of years because of field conditions during the regular season, let alone preseason. We know that Andy Reid is infamous for saying, no, I'm going to play them deep into the second quarter, and they play like 1 or 2 drives. Like, I think that's what's going to happen. I think you're going to see some of the starters play. Patrick will get a couple drives probably, and then they'll pull him out. It depends. If the field is so bad, I will say that they probably play Patrick one drive, if that. It's going to really determine how they're looking out the gate. And real quick, not to just jump off that question, but I will say just off the guys that you're watching for, I do want to put a couple names out there for you guys to pay attention to. And these are guys actually on the defensive side that I think we need to watch. The linebacker Curtis Jacobs. This guy he's been the first dude coming out of
Penn
camp.
State.
Coming out of for practice every morning that shows real leadership out of a 22-year-old kid, and he's been actually performing at a very high level on one-on-one drills. And you're right, I've been saying this ad nauseum that 95% of this roster at least has already been solidified. It's some of these fringe players. I think Curtis Jacobs could be one of those guys that could end up finding his way on this roster. Also, Fabian Lovett Sr. That's another guy that I think you got to watch out for as well. A defensive tackle out of Florida State that the Chiefs really like. He was undrafted as well, but had a ton of talent. I think he had a 3rd or 4th round grade. So this is a dude that has been really working hard to make it on the roster. He's been actually really getting the praise of a lot of the coaches on both sides of the ball, which is a big thing. And then watch the defensive backs in this one. Obviously, we know Shamari Connor and these other guys are going to make the team, but some of these young bucks that are trying to figure out where they're going to be exactly. So we know Joshua Williams, Jalen Watson, Trent McDuffie are probably solidified where they're at, but a lot of these pieces, Spags is going to be moving all over the place because he has tall guys, short guys with short arms, short guys with long arms. Like, he's got a lot of different defensive styles he can play with these guys. Watch what he does with some of these young bucks in the preseason that might be on the way out or might be making their way onto this roster. I'm really excited to watch how, because they've thrown so many resources over these last 3 or 4 years at defensive back. It's a true battle there. It's so much so that they're so deep and they're so confident they let L'Jarius Sneed go. I think that they got a real depth battle there, and that's a good problem to have at cornerback.
I've got about 13 more slides, so get comfortable in your chairs, but we'll probably save those for next week. I will finish off with one last thing, a little piece of trivia here. If you know it, don't shout it out quite yet. We'll give the chat some time to try and figure it out. Of any player ever drafted by the Chiefs, which one of those has the most yards playing for another team? And those yards are 7,865.
Joe Horn.
Well, we weren't supposed to yell it out, Brian. You didn't listen to the beginning.
Oh,
of the
sorry, my bad.
You do have it. Here it is, Joe Horn. You are correct. Silhouette helped as he's holding the cell phone.
Brian's
got to get off. He's got to go.
I couldn't hold it in.
Brian B. Shelton.
Another little piece of trivia for that is Marquise Hollywood Brown is the second Chiefs wide receiver ever with the nickname Hollywood, as Joe Hollywood Horn had the nickname first. Players called him that because of his off-the-field escapades. It wasn't quite an endearing mark, but that's why Marty kind of got rid of him there, sent him back to the Saints. So
I love Joe. He was my receivers coach at the Derek Thomas football camp in June of 1998, and I will never forget. I'll never forget that. And I want the fact that Chiefs receiving core. We talked about it. Derek Alexander, Joe Horn, Andre Rison was still there. Man, that was a good receiving core, and Joe went on to be quite a player in this league. I was at a Chiefs Saints game in 2004 when Joe Horn burned us for a touchdown, and Aaron Brooks touchdown that
we should have won. That
Saints
game.
won. I know, it was horrible.
The Tampa Bay game the next week too.
The Tampa Bay game was the week before, and we lost that game, and then the Saints game. But yeah. So that was the end of that season. The end of the 2004 season was not only like an 0-3 start, I think it was, or 0-3 start, and then got it together, beat like the Colts and the Ravens, and then cratered again, and then that was it. 2004 was one of my biggest disappointing seasons.
Priest Holmes got hurt.
That was Chiefs. Priest Holmes not go season. Yeah.
John Harrison wants to see Kadarius Toney catch 3 or 4 footballs and then be traded for a 7th round draft pick. That could happen. What do you think, Noah?
I think I want Kadarius Toney to be our running back. Find a way for him to be on this roster.
RB2, baby. RB2 Kadarius. Let's go.
We'll have a lot more next week of this kind of thing, and we'll get to a lot more of our graphics and a lot more of our takes as we have some fallout from the preseason week 1. We loved it. This is why we do this. Merril Hoge was on here for an hour, and really we wanted to make time for that. It was important. So hope you all enjoyed it as much as we did. So thanks a lot, guys.
Inspiring. And I will say this, so go to Brian B. Shinan and watch the Blitz. Go to Lance Twidwell of the Spoken this Saturday for your Chiefs pregame. Until next Tuesday, this is Shaggy Shane saying, go Chiefs, baby!
Go Chiefs!